The key really is to realize first that you're going to exit. Either the business is going to die eventually, or it's going to end up in someone else's hands eventually. And so how much control do you want to have over that?
This is The Fighting Entrepreneur, the podcast dedicated to entrepreneurs looking to change the world. Learn how to start, build, and scale a business in today's highly competitive business environment. Here's your host, The Fighting Entrepreneur, Anik Singal.
What's up, you crazy fighting entrepreneurs? Welcome back to another episode, and this is going to be an interesting one. We're not going to talk about internet marketing and all that stuff. We're going to talk about something far more interesting and something I'm dying to learn about, and that is exit planning. Now, right? I get chills. Like, what do you mean exit planning? Well, listen, a lot of entrepreneurs want to eventually exit their companies. You want to sell or have an M&A or pass it down generations or I don't know, whatever it is that when you want to eventually get out of that business. The thing with us entrepreneurs is it's the last thing we're thinking about when we're starting. And unfortunately, I think those moments where we don't think about it come to bite us in the butt later on when we actually want to do it. So I have with us today one of the most premium experts in the entire world on the topic of exit planning. So help me welcome to our Fighting Entrepreneur podcast, Mr. Pat Ennis. Pat, how are you, man?
Thank you, Anik.
All right. So
it's great to see you. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. And I got to tell this story to everybody. Pat is actually the father of the producer of our podcast, Joe. So sometimes you hear Joe screaming and shouting in the background. This is
you won't hear me screaming and shouting in the foreground.
Hopefully not. But what a great, interesting connection in the world, and just so happens to be you're highly involved in the business community here in the local Maryland area, and your topic of expertise and your passion is exit planning. And I really just, we obviously spoke a little bit during the pre-interview, and just to so I could get ready with my questions, and I was blown away. Just in the pre-interview, I walked in, I was like, there's like 15 things that I haven't thought about. I got to be honest with everybody here, in case you're getting nervous, I don't think I'll exit Lurn ever. I love this company. It's going to be with me forever until I got to pass it down, hopefully to my kids or something. But I am involved in businesses that sooner than later are going to exit, and I know that the CEOs of those companies will be listening to this. So I'm very interested, Pat. I would love if you could just give us a second to talk to us about your background. I mean, you have such a different background than most of our listeners are used to, but you are just what they need to hear from right now.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me, Anik. It's a privilege to be here. Really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this very important topic and get the word out, if you will. But also appreciate everything that you're doing here at Lurn and how you're helping business owners to grow and scale and build what I'm going to talk about eventually here, a sellable business. So my background is mostly wealth management. I started in 1980 selling insurance for Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, ended up at Merrill Lynch, was doing financial planning when that got big in the 1980s. From Merrill Lynch, went to Fidelity, and at Fidelity, I transitioned from a wealth manager to a manager of people, processes, and started to study management and leadership. And from there, I was recruited to become an executive director of a nonprofit. We were just talking about your nonprofit, which I commend you for, by the way.
Thank you.
And so for 8 years, I was like the COO of a nonprofit that planted churches. And it was really during that period that I got real interested in business owners, because I met a lot of business owners like you who they were having great impact through their businesses with their families, with their employees and their families, their customers, the community, even charities. They're very charitable people. As a matter of fact, our biggest donors were business owners. And so coming out of the wealth management community, one of the other observations I made is we oftentimes didn't spend a whole lot of time with business owners, at least small business owners, because oftentimes their biggest asset was their business, okay, and not their investment portfolio, right? So they were often neglected by the planning community. And so it was during the nonprofit, I ended up going back to wealth management as a partner in a registered advisory firm over in Virginia. And during that time, I was there for 4 years. We had two business owners come to us, and neither one of them had our minimum account of $1 million in investable assets. But they did, each of them, have business interest. And they basically, one of them in particular, begged us to bring him on as a client because he couldn't get help anywhere. And so we did, and about 18 months later, both of those guys sold their businesses. And the $1 million minimum was no longer a challenge for either one of them. And so 5 years ago, I went into this full time and basically hung out a shingle. Well, 10 years ago, hung the shingle out full time 5 years ago. And really just helping owners to build strategically, block and tackle strategic planning and management consulting. But real quick into it, one of the two clients I had, baby boomer like me, we were in meetings with his wife, and his wife said, "Hey, it's great that you guys keep talking about building and growing this business, but I don't want to own it. And so what are you going to do about that?" And he kind of looked at me, and I said, "Well, I can probably figure it out. I'm also a certified financial planner in addition to these other things." And so I started to put the pieces together, and I have a board of advisors for my firm and CPA, and I was describing to him what we were doing, and he said, "Well, you know what that is? That's exit planning." I said, "No." Didn't know what it was really. He said, "You can actually get certified in it fairly quickly because you are a certified financial planner and you're these other things." So I did. And so that's been the tip of our spear for the last 4 to 5 years, is helping owners think through how they're going to eventually exit. Because I would challenge one of the things that you just said a second ago. You said, I don't think I'll ever leave Lurn. Well, yeah, you're going to leave Lurn at some point, one way or the other.
It's guaranteed.
It's guaranteed. There's very few things about being in business that's guaranteed or absolute. That is one of them.
And my departure is one of them. Yeah, you're right. So now, about 4 to 5 years ago, you made that big transition from kind of like being more of a financial planner mindset to exit planning. Are you still doing financial planning, or is you're full-blown just exit planning now for people? We
are full-blown exit planning, and what that looks like is this. We help owners make sure that they build a business that's transferable or sellable, because if you have a sellable business, you're going to have more options for exit. And then, too, because we do have, particularly me, have a lot of experience and knowledge, training, certifications on the personal side, we can recognize gaps there too. Okay. So one of our distinctives or differentiators is that we have a comprehensive approach to exit planning. We don't actually do wealth management. We don't do financial planning. We work with financial planners. Most of our referrals come from financial planners or CPAs or attorneys. So we have that actually in common. I don't know if you know this, but that's how I got my start when I was 18 years old. Yes, I do know that. Yeah, Joe told me the whole story. That's one of the reasons I was so intrigued. Series 6, 26, and 63, or one of the. I had those certifications, and I had a bunch, millions under management. And then and you were doing it while you were in school. I was doing it while I was in school. I was probably not the most credible to be managing millions of dollars, but I was doing well, so it's okay. My clients were making good money, so no problems there. But that's great. Amazing. So really, I want everyone here to take away one thing, which was an aha moment for me when we spoke during the pre-interview, and that was exit planning isn't just about like how we as entrepreneurs think about M&A, selling your business. It's also about transferring your business, because like you said, at some point, even if you hold your company for life, at some point you have to exit it. And so even at that point, there needs to be a plan put forth from a tax perspective, from so many different perspectives on how you transfer this asset over, this business over. So we're going to get into that. So I want to dive right in because I think one of my first questions is going to address some of this transfer and all of this stuff. But Pat, as you might know, we have a bit of a tradition here at the Fighting Entrepreneurs. If you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Pat Ennis. I, Pat Ennis. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. To tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Truth. Nothing but the truth. All the truth. All truth. And reveal all my exit planning secrets. Yes, and reveal all my exit planning secrets. And tell awesome stories about Joe. And I'm more than willing to do that. No oath needed for that. More than willing. Awesome. All right, well, let's move right into round number 1, everybody. All right, so round number 1.
What is exit planning? I mean, so just to give you some idea, Pat, you're talking right now to an audience of many of them are very, kind of just starting with the idea of entrepreneurship. They're out there fighting. They may be having some success. Now, we have a portion of our audience, of course, that's doing great. They're big numbers. Sure. But I don't think I've ever heard the two words exit planning in my entire industry in 16 years of being in this industry.
Yep. Well, you're not unique and you're not alone. And that's why I really appreciate you allowing me to come here today, Anik, just to more get the word out. So what is it? What's exit planning? Boy, if I had a nickel for every time we're asked that question. Okay, so there's a number of different ways you can exit. And really it gets down to, what does exit mean to you? To you, it might mean selling completely to a third party, an outsider. Giving them the keys and they give you a big fat check. Mm-hmm. You walk away, they walk away. Or it might mean like a 72-year-old client that we have who wants to work in a business until her last day on earth. And so what we've done with her is make sure that the business is operating in a way to where, and it can be transferred to the next generation in a way that it can continue very smoothly when that happens. But at the same time, she wants to more and more be able to pull back and really act as chairman versus day-to-day operations. So that's what it might look like for someone. It might mean, like we just had a client successfully sell his business to a key employee and one of his children within the last 2 months. We had another client successfully sell to a third party, in this case a strategic buyer, within the last 3 months. And what that looked like was, it's a very successful company here in the area. You'd know the name of it if I mentioned it. And a strategic buyer from another part of the country, Ohio, wanted to come into this geographic area. But they didn't want to build from the ground up. So they came in and they were looking for firms that were strong and all the different value drivers they wanted them to be strong in. And so they worked out a deal. The owners, the past owners, our clients, are still going to work in the business for a period of time, which is it's pretty common. The ideal situation is that you've got control over that and not the buyer, so that when that time comes, if you really wanted to just walk away, you'd have a business operating to the point where you can dictate that rather than the buyer, because most of the time the buyer is dictating that and saying, look, too much of the business still runs through you, so we're going to need you here. We're not going to pay you 4X that you want. We're going to pay you 1, and you're going to be here for another 3 years, and you're going to meet these metrics. If you don't, then we're not going to pay you the additional X, 1X. That's the way it often looks. So liquidation is an exit route, sale to third party, sale to insider, sale to an ESOP, absentee ownership, of course, death and permanent disability.
Wow, there's a lot of ways to.
There are quite a few.
Now, here's six or seven right there.
The key really is to realize first that you're going to exit. Either the business is going to die eventually, or it's going to end up in someone else's hands eventually. And so how much control do you want to have over that? And to think through, all right, what role am I willing, or roles am I willing to play when I leave here? Am I willing to be a lender? Am I willing to be a shareholder? What do I want life to look like after I leave? And then you can start to reverse engineer. So exit planning is all about helping owners figure out their ideal exit route, if you will, based on their goals and objectives, financial goals, value-based goals, legacy goals, and then helping them to design and implement a plan, a strategic plan that is going to accomplish all that. And one of the misperceptions, common misperceptions, is that exit planning is all about the future. We've heard this before. Look, that's great, I understand, but I gotta keep the lights on today. And I got to pay Joe Ennis, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. And so I can't, that's the misperception in that it's all about the future. It's actually very much about the present. Because, again, if you build a sellable business, you will have many options for exit, and building a sellable business is all about today.
So actually, let's let that be round two, because I don't understand that exactly. So I'm going to kind of move into that. So let's move into round number two. Okay, so round number two, you say exit planning is more about today. I can tell you right now, as an entrepreneur, so I put my entrepreneur hat on right now. I'm going 15 hours a day. I barely have enough time to manage the today, to make sure the company stays afloat, revenue's coming, growth is happening, all these elements, especially if there happen to be investors in the company, then there's a whole nother level of, fussing. So then when someone comes along and says, this is exactly like, the debate that I've probably had with my wife 15 times in the past about we need a will, we need a trust, we need a this. And she's like, I don't want to deal with it. And I'm like, we have to have this.
Yeah, you got to do that.
But it's like, when do you have the time? You can push it off. So I kind of understand what you mean by it's about the today and not about the future. But can you expand on that?
Well, it's about both.
Okay.
But a misperception is it's all about the future, not about the present. Where it's very much about the present, because if you build a sellable business, and here's what we would represent as a sellable business. First off, financial performance. You ever watch Shark Tank? Of course you do. Those guys are your friends.
Yeah.
Some of their first questions are, okay, tell us about sales, past sales, future sales projections. Tell us about cost of acquisition of customers. Tell us about profitability. What are your margins, gross, net? Okay, so financial performance. If you've got you got to have strong revenue, strong profitability if someone's going to want to buy you, because if someone's going to buy you, they're buying future cash flow. They're buying future profit. That's just one value driver. That's all about today, is managing that today. You're doing that here, I'm sure. Then there's future growth potential. They're buying the reliability and predictability of future cash flow too. So how are we going to scale, which one of the things that you're very much helping owners with here, customer satisfaction, differentiation of your products and services, how dependent or not dependent is your company on any one supplier, any one vendor, any one employee. Usually it's the owner, okay? Recurring revenue is huge. If 75% of your revenue is recurring, the valuation of your business is going to go up significantly, rather than if you had little to no recurring revenue.
So when you say it's about the present, it's making sure you have a healthy business. You're running a healthy business, but thinking about, because I think about this all the time, about how reliant is Lurn on me, and I think of it from a very selfish perspective of, hey, I would like to be able to take vacations and, know that the company's running and it doesn't fall apart while I'm gone. But at the same time, if I'm an investor buying someone's company and I know that the company's fully reliant on them, the company's name is Dave E. Jones Incorporated. Well, then Davey Jones has to stay. I can't let him go. Yeah. But how, so when you say it's about the present, let's say I'm starting a company. I'm brand new. Like I just registered my LLC, right?
Yep.
Is there a checklist of things I should be going through for the exit planning stuff? Or should I just go ahead and wait like a few months until revenue starts and things are like picking up? Or is this, because we had our lawyer in here, right? And he talked about all of the things that whether you have revenue or don't, you've got to go through in the beginning of a corporation, how it impacts taxes and partnerships and future legal battles. So is exit planning something that we should post-revenue or pre-revenue?
You can't get started too soon.
Okay.
Because it's all about how you're going to build a business.
Okay. So it's once the business is really running and doing something.
It's really strategic planning.
Okay.
Because, if you're going to start a business, you're going to have a business plan or strategic plan, and you're going to put numbers to it. You're going to have a strategic financial plan for that. So you're going to do that right away, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's part of it. And when you're doing that, when you're building that, you're going to think through, all right, what are our products and services? How are we going to differentiate them? How are we going to price them? Is there any way to build recurring revenue into that pricing? How are we going to scale? What are we going to do to ensure satisfied customers? We talk about the Net Promoter Score. That's what we use. That's what we encourage clients to regularly survey their customers or clients with. And then from the very beginning, are there things that we can do to help you, the owner, think through maybe different phases? Phase 1, everything is very much going to run through Anik. Phase 2, we want to start moving away from that and putting infrastructure in place to make the business so that Anik can take a 6-month vacation and not even pick up his phone.
6 months. Whoa. A 6-day would be great right now.
Yeah.
6 months, that's a dream. Yeah. I'd go crazy. I can't take a 6-month vacation. I'm too hyperactive. Yeah. But I get what you're saying.
And that's true for most entrepreneurs.
That's awesome. All right, listen, that makes total sense. I hope you walk away understanding that, get your business started, but as soon as it gets started and revenue starts coming in, every entrepreneur I know, myself included, guilty as charged, we just don't take a time to step back and say, okay, now what am I doing? Like, revenue's coming. Where am I going with this? What's my plan? You got to do it. And I'm telling you, as someone who spent tens of thousands, maybe multiple 6 figures fixing things afterwards with my lawyer that we already did a podcast with, like, I could have saved. Now I do it in the beginning. So when we have companies, like right now I'm in the middle of establishing new businesses, I actually sit down even pre-revenue, because at this point, a lot of my new companies, I know they'll have revenue. Like, we kind of have the circle, we know the network, but we're sitting there, we're thinking, all right, what's the dream of this? Is this a cash flow company? Is this going to exit? Is this going to pass down to someone? What is our expectation? What return do I want from this company? Is this, is this something that's a legacy company, or is it a business? It's meant to generate revenue. And these are not questions I'm getting ready right now to actually dip my feet back into the financial planning world. I miss that world. So where I'm
really,
I'm studying for some more tests right now. And so we want to, myself and a couple people, we want to put together a company in that space. And it's amazing to see the discussions we're having already, which is, what is this company? I mean, is it a short-term thing, or is this going to grow big? Do we have other things we want to do with it? So I guess I didn't even know it, but we're kind of doing some exit planning without really calling it that, but that's what it's called. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, let's move into round number 3. This is going to be the fun round. I'm going to ask you a very open-ended question that I did ask you in the pre-interview, and then you blew my mind, and my whiteboard is still full of all the things you said. Okay, what are some of the key elements or ingredients of a successful exit plan? What are the things I got to start? Let's get the checklist going. By the way, I do want to tell everybody, you're going to want to see the notes for this. So what I want you to do right now is, I need you to, not right now, but after this, you can go to anikpodcast.com, ANIK podcast.com, all the show notes, because what we're going to do is we're going to first of all, you can take pictures, put pictures of all this up, and then we'll put all the details, like a checklist for you. So if you want to sit down and do this, you could do it right after this episode's done. But so please, what do I do? Like, what's my checklist?
Okay. Yeah, so there are some key ingredients. First and foremost, goals and objectives, just like anything else, right? When you built this, when you decided to build Lurn, you had goals and objectives, personal, business, just clarity on those things. And we find that key motivators for a lot of business owners who, particularly baby boomer business owners who are exiting, which makes up most of our clientele, by the way. We have some millennials, but most of them are baby boomers. They have financial goals, but oftentimes their value-based goals are as primary or as significant to them as their financial goals. Like, for instance, the guy that just sold to the insiders, one of his kids and a key employee, when we first met with him 3 to 4 years ago on we met with him and he said, I'm going to sell to a third party. And we said, okay, well, why'd you decide to do it that way? Mm-hmm. He said, well, I think that's the only thing I can do. And so we started to draw him out and found out that he had some real values-based goals. What he really wanted to do was to transfer it to his kids and this key employee. But he didn't think he could do it because, which this is typical, they don't have any money. They didn't have any money, and he didn't know how to do it. So over the next couple of years, we helped him devise a plan, create a plan to where he could actually do what he really wanted to do. Now, in that, he was willing to receive a little bit less money in order to have that value-based goal of transferring it to this key employee who's helped him build the business, and it ended up being one of his kids. So critical element number one is clarity around your goals, objectives, financial goals, value-based goals, even legacy goals. And this is where a skilled third party, we have found that it really does help, because business owners are, you said it earlier, busy, just running. And so oftentimes they need help to step back with someone who's skilled, particularly with their spouse, and just think through big picture.
So before we move on to number two, I got to ask, because that gets me excited and confused. I would have thought the same thing. Like if I fast forward, it's like, well, my kid's broke and my key employee has, they don't have enough money to buy a business. How do you do that then? Is it just like a long-term, they get paid a little bit over time? Is it a bank get involved? Are there professional organizations that fund that kind of thing?
It can be any of that or all of it. Okay, but here's a couple of key elements that have to be in place for that to happen. First off, the employees, the key people, kids want to own the business. They have to want to own it, right? And then not only do they have to want to own it, but they have to be able to be owners. There's a big difference between being a real strong key employee and being an owner. You've been an owner, you've been a key employee probably. You go to bed with all the risk, okay? Not everyone can do that. Even your best top employee might not be able to do that. So we need to figure that out. And then the company has to have strong cash flow, because the company is going to end up financing at least part of the sale in most cases. So you have to have strong cash flow.
When you say the company is going to finance it, so that basically means, let's say they sold the company for $1 million, he'll get paid over a period of time? Or is it that the company's strong cash flows are so good that a bank would be willing to come in and support the sale?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. All right, let's keep moving. So goals and objectives. We talked about personal business. We talked about value goals, financial goals, legacy goals. Now number two. What's in the second on my checklist?
Yeah, financial gap analysis, absolutely critical. And here's what I mean by that. So what do you want to do post-business, or whatever exit means to you? If it means remaining on and being an absentee owner, or if it means, no, I want to leave here. I see this as, I treat this business like an investment. I'm going to sell this investment. I'm going to leave. Whatever you want to do next, how much is it going to cost? So your financial planning, you just mentioned you're thinking about getting back into financial planning space again. That number is critical. But then, what's everything worth now that you have and own? And here's where most owners in our space, and by the way, our market are businesses up to 20, 25 million in revenue, so small businesses. For most of those folks, and I mentioned this earlier, their biggest asset's the business, all right? Yet, they typically don't know what it's really worth. They typically overinflate it. Like when I was in wealth management years and years ago, and you, Anik, came to me and you needed a financial plan, here's what I would say. This is what most financial advisors say who aren't familiar with this space. Okay, so how much is your business worth? And I'll tell them 3x when it's really worth maybe 1.5. Yeah. And it throws the whole planning off. Okay, so financial gap analysis, what's everything going to cost after, what's everything worth, and is there a gap?
What is I don't even know what a financial gap analysis is. Is it's the goal of that analysis to determine the value of the company, or is it just it's an accounting thing like P&L sheets and all of that? Is it different than that?
Well, the gap is just simply how much is everything going to cost me when I leave, and what is everything that I own now worth, and subtraction, and then is there a gap there? Usually there is. Let's say that you want to exit in 5 years, and you need $5 million to do everything you want to do next. And you've got $1 million in personal assets, and your business is worth $1 million. Then you've got a gap of 3. And so you need to make that up in 5 years. In most cases, how's that going to be made up with a small business owner? It's going to be made up by growing their biggest asset, right? The business. So that's where the building sellable value comes in again. But for the valuation on the business, to get that good number, you really need an outside objective valuation and not just back of the envelope.
So is that number 3 on our list, or is that number 2?
That's
Still
a piece of the financial gap analysis.
Outside
it's a key piece.
valuation for your business.
And it doesn't have to be, there's different levels of valuation. For planning purposes, for this financial gap analysis I'm talking about, it doesn't have to be a qualified or certified valuation. In other words, certified or qualified by a certified valuation specialist, because those cost a lot more money than just an estimate of value for a few $1,000. So that's number 2, financial gap analysis. Number 3, we've already talked about to a great degree, and that's building a sellable business. Because if you don't have a sellable business, you're not going to be able to sell it. And for baby boomers, this is a big concern, because there's 8 out of 10 want to exit in the next 10 years, or 7.5 boomers out of 10 want to exit in the next 10 years. But Gen Xers and millennials don't always want to buy the businesses for baby boomers. So it's very much, in some ways, it's very much a buyer's market, and yet it can be a seller's market if you've built a business that's truly sellable.
Do you, by the way, as a side question, not related to this checklist, but do you actually, like, if someone came to you and said, hey, I want to exit, I want to sell, do you actually go out and also look for buyers and help them find those, or is your part mostly about getting them set up and planned?
Yeah, we work with transaction specialists, intermediaries like investment bankers and business brokers who actually do transactions, and that's their job. Now, because of the work we do and the network we have, we informally.
So when you talked about building a sellable business, in my notes, is this where you would go over the 8 value drivers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I have in my notes that we talked about, like, focusing on the today, which we just talked a lot about. Do you want to quickly summarize what those 8 value drivers are? Because I'll write them down here.
And so what we do is we implement John Warlow's the Value Builder System, myself and one of my associates.
I want to write this down. Who is that?
John Warlow, the Value Builder System. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a podcast with him on our podcast here.
Sweet. At the Lurn Center.
Thursday. It's
Awesome.
going to be remote. He's not going to be here live.
Okay.
But John,
how do you, so John, and then how do you spell his last name?
2 R's and 2 L's, Warlow.
Got it. John Verlow, and the name of it is?
The Value Builder System.
Value Builder System. Got it.
Yeah, and so we're certified in that system, and basically he and his organization, they've analyzed over 40,000 companies and found that these 8 value drivers, if present and strong, result in up to twice doubling your multiple.
Wow.
The average, what we do is score you in all those different value drivers and give you one compilation score. And the average score is typically around 59. If you move toward 80, you can more than double your multiple, based on the analysis of 40,000 plus companies. And so, value driver number 1, I've mentioned financial performance. That's, again, revenue and profitability. Number 2 would be growth potential. Someone who wants to buy your business, they want to see consistent revenue growth historically, but then they want to see how predictable it's going to be going forward. What's scalability going to look like? How are we going to scale this? Is there room for us to buy this and still scale it and grow it, right? And so that would be a second one. Third one would be differentiation. We call it the monopoly control, but basically what differentiates your products and services from your competitors. Customer satisfaction. We use a Net Promoter Score for that.
Was that 4th? Customer satisfaction?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And basically, there's this guy by the name of Fred Reichheld, and he worked for Bain & Company, did a ton of research on customer satisfaction surveys, and distilled it down to this one question. And you know what it is. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer? Well, that is a huge predictor of future growth. So we focus on that. We focus on...
Quick break for
yeah.
a second
Yeah.
for anyone listening. It's a great book. The Ultimate Question is the name of the book. And we've applied it in all of the companies. We have it built into Lurn. When you log into Lurn.com, you will see the question unless, it comes up every now and then, unless you've answered it before. At all of my other companies, it is administered there. We actually watch them or track it. And the book is amazing because it walks you through Southwest and some of the other companies and shows you what their scores were during their greatest boom in growth. And there's such a direct correlation between a high and net promoter score. And it's not easy to get because the way the formula runs, it's not an easy thing to get a high score. You have to really work for it. But I love it. So I'm glad to see that is one of your your factors. And we do pretty good with it. So I like it even more because
You know what's interesting about that?
Yeah.
Is anything above 15% is above average. If you get a 15%...
1.5?
Yeah. If you get a 15% net promoter score, but anything above that is above average. Now, the world-class organizations that you were mentioning are 50 and above.
Wow.
So if you and like you said and indicated, that directly correlates with the growth that they've seen over the last number of years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So number 5.
Let's see. Let me make sure that I haven't. Okay. Independence. We call it the Switzerland structure. Switzerland remained independent throughout World War II. It's basically how independent is your business from any one customer, any one employer, or any one employee, supplier, so on and so forth. Recurring revenue, huge.
That's number 6.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more of that you have. And we're convinced that, when we get a new client and we start talking to them about recurring revenue, they might say, that really doesn't work for us because of the kind of business that we have. But really, have you heard of H. Bloom, the flower guys? No. That's the most brutal industry to get into. Think about it. You sell flowers, your inventory starts to die as soon as the farmer cuts it. They end up throwing away 60%, a traditional florist does, of their inventory. These guys figured out how to build a subscription model where they just took that problem from office buildings, wealth management firms, everyone who wanted hotels who wants to have flowers, fresh flowers regularly. They took that problem, created subscription, and now they may be the largest. They're certainly one of the largest in the world. Wow. And they've got predictable, stable income because they took that brutal business and created. So we think no matter what the industry is, you can figure out a way to create some recurring revenue.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, number 7.
Hub and spoke, which is basically the role of the owner. We want to work with that owner to figure out, okay, how can we begin to build out this organization so that you don't continue to be the hub. Yeah. Okay. And then the last one is cash flow. And these aren't in
any order.
Yeah. They're just coming to mind as they do. The other one is cash flow. When someone buys your business, if they do, they know they're going to have to write 2 checks. Whatever they agree to pay you for whatever interest they're buying right up front. And then they know that they're going to have to write some kind of checks to operate the business for a short period of time. And so if your cash flow is negative or real tight, that increases the risk and it's going to decrease the amount of money that they're going to want to pay for your business.
So do you work, so let's say I came to you today, right? And I said, I want to exit plan Lurn. And I don't know, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, would this be a right time for me to come to you and then we go through all of these? Or would now be a time I come to you, you put me in a class, give me some training, and then say, hey, come back to me closer to the time, but make sure all of these are addressed? How does working with you, like in a business like mine, because there's a lot of people watching and listening right now that do have multi-million in revenue. Yeah. And I guess, but they're not really thinking about the exit. Yeah. But they're probably not thinking about any of this either, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, there's at least 5 things in here I need to improve. So yeah. With your company, how does that best work? Yeah, I'll answer that question. Let me first say this, though. In regard to that point, and I appreciate you continuing to make it about how they're really not thinking about exit right now, because they're really not.
And it's understandable. I mean, they're just busy taking care of business today, right? The thing is, though, and we find this with baby boomer clients who we have and have had who have built a business for decades sometimes, and they've been real busy building it. Exit planning, if you start when you're ready to exit, when you're emotionally ready, it's a lot of work. It's a ton of work. It takes a lot of time, and it's not inexpensive, right? So the sooner you get started, the more you're going to be able to budget the time and the money, and the more you increase your chances of your business and you being really ready when you're emotionally ready. Okay, so what we do, we have a few core products. One would be called the Exit Readiness Base Plan, and basically it's a diagnostic. And what we do is we diagnose both your personal and your business readiness for exit. And we go in and look at all these things that we've talked about today, and it takes us 2 to 4 months to get this done, depending on the availability of the owner. And we've got a pretty good system. It's a pretty streamlined system, and we can do it pretty,
So this could be done way before the actual date of someone wanting to exit.
Oh, it should be.
It should be done years before.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because the diagnosis may reveal all kinds of stuff that you need to get done that you can't get done in 6 months.
And so what comes to my mind, for those of you listening right now, so many of you are building e-commerce businesses. It's a big thing right now in our industry. People are popping up Shopify stores, and there is an entire marketplace that has been built online where people are selling their Shopify stores to others who are building cash flow. They want to buy the Shopify store because they just look at it as dividend payouts and they want to accrue a lot of property. But here's an interesting pivot I want to throw in for all of you Shopify store owners. Why not go through some of this right now and figure out a way to make your store worth way more than what it is on an open marketplace just because people are paying 1-2x there? Doesn't mean you couldn't invest an extra few months in prepping the right way and get to 4 or 5x.
Sure.
Especially this one little element right here, number 6, recurring revenue.
Oh.
And it's funny because we don't have recurring revenue at Lurn, and it's come up multiple times. And sometimes I will tell you, my initial reaction is, well, that's not my business model. It doesn't fit. But you're right. Neither is it Amazon's business model, but they got recurring in there, didn't they, with Prime? Like they found a way to get it in there. And then they're just killing, right?
Yeah.
And same thing goes to all of you e-commerce experts or people with Shopify stores. You might immediately think, well, it's not. Well, why not have someone like Pat challenge you on that and see if there isn't something? Because what if you took just a month or two to figure that problem out or that possibility out, and it would triple the valuation of your business, so that you're not just selling it in these open marketplaces, but you're using a professional service to get so much more money for your business.
Yeah, and sometimes what it takes is bundling, and I know you do this, bundling some services. Because when we talk about scalability, when we work through scalability with just traditional businesses, we're talking about products and services that are repeatable, valuable, and teachable, okay? And the tendency can be for owners, and this is where they can get into a trap, what we call the owner's trap, is to, when they start out, they do a great job with 1 or 2 products, but customers start to ask them to do more things because they're really good at these few things, and they do them. And then what happens is they're the only ones in the organization that can really do those things. And then so they keep getting pulled into the customer situations over and over and over, and they get in this trap, right? So we want to help them know, let's think through how to scale these products and not add a ton of products unless they are scalable. But sometimes what you run into is the most teachable are the least valuable. Okay, and so the margins are thin. And so then what you can do, and what you should think about doing, is maybe bundling some of those teachable, very teachable, but maybe low margin, less valuable, wrap it in a service or something that you can propose as value.
Love it. All right, so you said 2 core products. One was Exit Readiness. That's specifically a diagnosis program. And then what was your second one?
Well, we have a few. That one is typically where we start. We either start there or with what we call a strategic financial plan it's a strategy renovation financial plan. Most of the businesses that we go into, in our market don't have a financial plan for their business. They're managing their money or their business out of the checkbook. Okay. How much cash is in there? How much cash isn't in there? They don't have, and so they don't have a structure to make strategic decisions. And so oftentimes that's where we'll start, and then that leads to all these other discussions. And so then we'll...
How long does that take usually for you?
Oh, that about the same, 2 to 4 months. Yeah, and in that though too, what we'll most often do is provide an estimate of value in the business, because we can do that.
What since we're on this topic right now, if someone wanted to actually engage in one of these services or one of the many, where can they go right now? What's the URL that someone can go to?
NSLP.com. That's
N as in Nancy?
And Ennis is E.
Oh, sorry, your last name.
Like Joe Ennis, your employee.
Yeah, Ennis.
ENNISLP.com.
LP.com. So
yeah, but let me mention this too. We have another site. It's called exitreadiness.com. And a millennial a couple of years ago that grew up in our church, he came to me about 3 years ago and he said, you know what, I really love what you guys are doing. And I've got an idea for a product. Just give me 14 hours, 6:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to build something for you, and I think you're going to like it. And he did. He built this online course. It's exitreadiness.com. It's an exit planning course. It's a baseline. There's a template there that we take you through it. There's like 10 seminars. I've done most of them. There's other resources there, white papers. It's a bunch of stuff there. We charge $180 for it. But for your listeners today, because we want to, we really want to get the word out, because there's so much at stake. And I can talk about that too. 90% discount.
Wow. Love it. Yes. All right. So
if they just put in Lurn discount,
is that,
LURN.
Is that that's the discount code is LURN?
Yep. LURN discount.
Okay, the whole word, one word, LURN discount. So go to exitreadiness.com. If you don't know how to spell it, go to anikpodcast.com, and we have it in the show notes. There's 90% off of their amazing course right now. That's just for Lurn members. So Lurn discount. Use that in the coupon code Lurn discount, LURN discount, one word, and you'll get 90% off of a $180 course. That's killer. I want to take the course actually. That's awesome.
And you know what else? Another product. A get started kind of product we've actually developed right here at Lurn. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we today just scheduled our second Exit Readiness Base Camp.
Oh, awesome.
And so it's one day. The morning sessions are all about building sellable value, and in the afternoon is we go through an exit checklist of some personal things you need to be thinking about. 25% discount on that for Lurn.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Where can they go for that?
They can go to NSLP.com and look for the Exit Readiness announcement bar at the top of the screen. And again, it's the same discount code. It's $895, so they would get 25% off of that. I think it's brings it down to like $650.
And then you get to come to the Lurn Center.
Yeah,
also.
and then you get to come and see Anik and Joe Ennis and others.
That's awesome. So there's just so much to do. There's so much to learn about this topic. I think for those of you listening right now, I know what I'm kind of walking away with and I'm the most interested in. And I think this is how you talk to an entrepreneur's heart. How to increase the value of your company. All right. And you went over 8 factors or 8 contributing, keys to increasing the value of your company. If you can start hitting these one at a time, each of them, the company value increases. And so alongside, by doing this, you're doing exit readiness. I mean, it's just happening on its own. We had gone away a little bit because we got into the 8 value drivers. Is there a fourth? Because we had done goals and objectives, financial gap analysis. Number 3 was building a sellable business, under which we had 8 factors.
Right. So 2 more, and I can
I wanted to
review
go into
these
those
quickly. Number 4 would be when you are approaching, if you're within 10 years of exiting, you want to exit in 10 years, you should get started right now planning, because if a diagnosis is done, an estimate of value in your company, and you find out that you're weak in most of those value drivers, for instance, it's going to take time to get those things in place. If you're within 5 years, you absolutely have to start today because there could be some severe tax ramifications to you if you don't. So the fourth key ingredient would be an experienced team of advisors. So if you're within that 5-year period or even 10-year, you're going to need some advisors. You're just going to have. You're going to have attorneys, and they might be business attorneys. They might be estate planning attorneys. You're going to have a CPA. Your wealth manager is going to be involved. Your insurance professional is going to be involved. You may have a transaction intermediary involved if indeed you want to sell to a third party, be it a strategic buyer or a financial buyer. You might need a banker involved. You may need a business consultant involved to train up your successor. Here's the big idea though. When you put together this team, they should be people who have experience in this kind of work.
Key word here, experience.
Yeah, experience.
Not just
because
a team.
No, because oftentimes what we run into is the business owner who started with a pickup truck and a tool belt has had the same person doing their accounting work throughout. And they're good at doing that. But when it comes to this kind of work and tax planning and structuring a buyout, a third-party sale, insider sale, you just want someone who does it a lot in all those different categories. And then, two, you're going to need someone to coordinate that team. And that team is, it's either going to be you, or it's going to be one of them, or it's going to be someone like us. It's kind of like building this building. If you were going to build this building yourself, you were going to have electricians, plumbers, carpenters, a whole list of specialists. And you had the money to do it, but you've never built a building before. You could decide to general contract it yourself. Probably not a good idea. Or you might say to Jane, who's been your CPA for years, Jane, I want you to do the tax planning, but I also want you to lead this project. And Jane gets a glassy look in her eye and says, I really don't want to do that. But then you press her, and she does it. Okay, and then 5 years downstream, the plumbing blows up because it's Jane the plumber, and or you hire a general contractor. And we're the general contractor. That's one of our differentiators is we know how to do this. We can do it. We know how to talk to each one of those specialists, and we know how they need to talk to each other. And so we can recognize the gaps.
So your team of advisors. Now, I'll just tell everyone a story here. I always go back to this every time we talk about building a great team. When I started my business, I needed a CPA, needed an accountant to file my taxes. It was too complicated. So I called up a family friend, still friends with them, love him to death. He was amazing. And said, can you help? And I call him uncle. Like I've known him for a long time. And he said, absolutely, I'll help you. And so he started running my taxes for a while and everything was good. And then got to a point where my business is doing very well. And I'm paying 7 figures in taxes. That's painful. But I remember going to him one day saying, hey, listen, I watch TV all the time and everyone's always angry at the rich who don't pay any taxes. How do I get to be one of those people that doesn't pay any taxes? Like, what are they doing that I don't know? And he's like, nothing. You can't do anything. Like, this is what you have to pay. And I'm like, it doesn't sound like an answer. There's got to be things I'm not capturing, investment vehicles I'm not capturing. So I, for a couple of years, 2-3 years, I just went with it and I just paid these huge taxes up until the day I was introduced to Tom Wheelwright, who's now my CPA. And I went and he comes in and looks and goes, whoa, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what? And he has experience with my kind of business and my kind of entrepreneur. And he's like, right here, boom, 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 boom. We could save you 7 figures. And all amazing things where I'm actually contributing to the economy. It's like all great things where I'm actually doing good things for the world and while, being rewarded for it. And I always go back and think I probably lost about $3 million because I didn't have the right person. Now, Tom charges...
You could have lost 6 by not making the change.
Exactly, right? Could have lost way more. Now, Tom, it cost me 5 times, if not 6 times the money.
Yeah, but do the math.
Do the math. It works out every single time. So that... Now, when it comes to advisors, I used to discount shop advisors. I'm the exact opposite now. The other way, if someone quotes me a price that's too cheap, I get, well, why? Like why, I want people that really know what they're doing. So I cannot express this enough for entrepreneurs, that whether you're in the early stages of your business, you're not thinking about, insurance and wealth professionals and all of this, but you're thinking about coach, you're thinking about someone to help you with your advertising, your funnels, think best. Don't think, where do I save the most money? Think, where do you get the best people? And I am such a big believer of this experienced team of advisors now, and that's come over time. 5 years ago, I would have never agreed to this. Now it's the only thing I look for, is getting the right people around me.
Smart.
Yeah. So, so experienced team of, you said there were two more.
No, that was number 4.
Okay, yeah. So there
one more?
Yeah.
And we've talked about it the entire time. Time. Because it all takes, it takes time. Yeah. And so one big thought idea here is, as we come to a close, I guess, there's so much at stake. Like, for instance, already in the short period of time, if you just think about the people you've served, the impact that you've had here at Lurn Nation, and what's it been, 2 years?
This physical location?
Yeah,
one. We just crossed our 1 year.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, in 5 years, fast forward, think about the impact you guys will have made here, not just with the business owners that you're helping to scale and build, but the community. I mean, you gave my son his first real solid professional job, and there are others here, their families, the vendors, suppliers, the economy, your charities that you support. Huge. That's not uncommon with small business owners. And this is what gets us charged up about the work that we do, because all of that is at stake when and how an owner exits. All of that. If they don't exit well, it can be terribly destructive for the family, for the families that work in a business, for the community that's come to depend on the business, the local economy, and then not to mention the national economy, that the backbone is small business owners of who you're serving every day with your products and services.
Well, that's amazing. Couldn't agree more. And honestly, if I hadn't spoken to you, I don't think I would be thinking about most of these elements right now, but I do need to think about them. That's my responsibility as not just an entrepreneur, but as the CEO of this company. I have to make sure that, God forbid something does happen to me, I want Lurn to live on. I want it to continue to serve all these people. Or if one day I decide to exit for whatever reason, you're right, I don't want to sacrifice on the values that have been ingrained into this company for so long. And money won't allow me to sacrifice on that, because there's only so much money you need in life until, you might as well do something good. So awesome. I just really want to have one more round here. Yeah. And here I really just thought, so let's move into, I don't know, we're up to round number 4, I think now. So round number 4, what are some funny, fun, or not so funny or fun? No, Joe, it's not about you, believe it or not. It's actually, not everything in the world is about you, Joe. And
that's true. It's not all about me.
I was going to ask some pitfalls.
That's good that you picked up on that since he's been working, because we've been telling him that now for how many years? It's not all about you.
No, it's everything I learn is about Joe, though, unfortunately. It kind of rotates around him. So what are some pitfalls, some things that you've seen, like some smack forehead moments where an entrepreneur's walked in and you've said, oh, God, had you just not done this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this would be so much easier. What are some common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make that hurts them?
Yeah, it's not hard to answer that. More often than not, it has something to do with, when they started the business, owners start businesses because they want freedom and they want control. And what happens is, and they're bulldogs, usually, entrepreneurs, they got a product, they're selling it, and we're gonna take the mountain. And they get to a certain point. Whereas if they don't recognize, when we get to this point, if I now don't get some other skill sets in here and more remove me, everything about me that got us to this place could end up killing the business going forward. Because I still want to control too much all the time. I want to be down in the details too much all the time. And that's fairly common.
So you come into a business and you notice that they don't have the right team.
Yeah.
And that they're still involved in everything.
Or maybe they don't have a team at all.
Wow.
Really.
Got it. All right. Anything else that you see? Any big mistakes?
Yeah, financial performance.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of small business owners are managing their financial performance, particularly the tax piece, to reduce taxes on an annual basis. Whereas if you're going to position the business to sell it, you need to prove profitability and earnings. And so for a period of time before, you're probably going to be wise not to run everything through, all your personal stuff through the financial performance, tax planning, not being willing to get the right people on the bus in the right roles. Here's what I mean. Oftentimes, if they have an organizational chart, it'll be faces rather than functions. Okay? Jim's been with me for 20 years. He's a loyal employee. Okay, great. What's his function? Well, he kind of does this, kind of does that. Well, what do you really need to grow this? What do you really need to scale it? What do you really need? What functions do you need? Oftentimes, the org charts are faces rather than functions.
So it's so amazing. So one question I have for you on on the financial side, do you ever? I imagine you would. So I asked this: do you ever deal with entrepreneurs that come in and they don't have financials? Like they have a QuickBooks that's half put together.
Most of the time.
What do you do with that? Can you go back and fix things?
We'll do some of it, but we don't drill down into it. No, but we'll hook them up with someone who can. If they don't have someone already who could do that, oftentimes they'll have someone who can do that piece, but they haven't. What is more important to us, or as important, probably more important, is they haven't been running their business with current financial statements. Like right now, okay, so it's not, if I was going to buy your business, let's say I was private equity, and you were going to recapitalize, and I was going to buy part of your business, and I came in and I said, okay, Anik, here's the list. Here's the due diligence list. Starts with financials, and we need these in a week. Or we need them by 10 days. If that goes into a few weeks, month, 2 months, what am I, the private equity guy, going to think? You're going to worry, right? More than likely, I'm going to back off. That's it. When we hear owners say, I'm ready to leave, we can ask a few questions like that and know within a few minutes, you know what, you're really not ready to leave. If you can't provide us your financials for the last 3 years, just that alone, you're not ready to leave.
So I'll tell this funny side story here. For when I started my business, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs listening right now would relate to this. I was in college still. I didn't understand any of this stuff. I was sadly studying finance of all things. But so what would happen? I started my business. Money started coming in. I was blessed. There was a lot coming in, and then all of a sudden it got to be too much. I was like, I need help. And the way I hired my first employee was on accident at a party Saturday night. I didn't even remember by Monday morning, and he just showed up at the door at 9 a.m. with a suit on and a briefcase, which was empty, because that's how he felt people should go to work. They should have a briefcase. So I opened the door. He comes in, and at the end of the week, he's like, okay, now I need, I want to get paid. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? So I took a piece of paper just like this, just a blank piece of paper, and I wrote his name on it. And I wrote down how much I paid and the date, because I was like, I must keep financial records. It's the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Wrote a check to him, paid it, and then this went on for a good year. And we finally got in, thank God, we got into an incubator program at University of Maryland. We moved in, got an office, and the first thing they asked me is like, okay, who's running your financials? And I said, me. And they said, great, let me introduce you to, and they had this financial guy who kind of managed all the incubator companies' financial. He was a CFO in a box. Mm-hmm. And till this day, still my CFO, Rich. And he came upstairs and he said, this is what I charge. And I come in a day and a half a week, and I'll do your financials and everything. And I said, great. He goes, okay, awesome. So what system are you using? Where can I log in? I said, log in. So what are you talking about? He's like, no, do you use like QuickBooks? I'm like, what's that? Yeah. And you could see his face start to get kind of like, he got that scared look. Yeah. And he's like, I said, well, what are you looking for? I said, oh, you want records? Like all the stuff I've done. He's like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I was like, I got you. Give me a second. I walk into my office. I pick up 2 big boxes. And I lug them in and I drop them on his desk and I'm like, boom. And I drop the other one and I'm like, yeah, now tell me you're not impressed with my entrepreneurial skills.
Sure.
And I remember the exact words. Rich looked at me. He turned to me slowly and he actually said, word for word, he said, please leave. I have a lot of work to do. and it took him, poor guy, him months to backdate and get all that in. So today, we're all up to speed. So I will tell you all of this. You've got to have your financials up to speed. I have a close family friend who runs a very, very big, pretty big kind of a fulfillment company, or just they do product sales and all of this. And I remember giving this person advice 4 years ago: get QuickBooks Online.
Sure.
Right? Oh no, I don't want to pay monthly. No, get QuickBooks Online. Cloud data, great. I don't want to pay it. Whatever. Well, last year, software on the computer went kaput. Lost all records.
Ouch.
And having to now go back through their taxes and financials and whatever they had happened to print it out and put around to put it all back together. And it's just, they're in trouble. Like, it sucks. And they were doing well. Like, that was a possibly sellable company. Now they're going to have some mess on their hands. So the importance of financials, even when you're a young entrepreneur doing very little, just keep it straight, keep it clean. It's so much easier to do it a little bit every day than to go back. But
it sure
it's just fun side story about how I sidelined Rich with 2 boxes of financial records. And
he stuck with you.
He stuck with me. Actually, he quit all the other companies and went full time with me, believe it or not. So
nice.
He probably had to. Yeah, I don't know why he's still here, Rich. If you're watching, man, you got to tell me why you still stick around in this craziness. Pat, it has been just absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I want to throw those URLs out for everybody. Again, exitreadiness.com. Remember, you get a massive discount, 90% off. The discount code is Lurn Discount. I took lots of notes for you, so go to anikpodcast.com.
Yeah, if there was such a thing as a no-brainer, which that's it. Yeah. I think it's like $18.
Seriously, if what you learned today was even 5% interesting to you, trust me, $18 makes it. You can really, this is stuff you need to know. And you know what? Internet marketers and all don't talk about this stuff, but this is the stuff that I'm moving into. You want to know where I'm going now? This is what successful big boy entrepreneurs do. And I want you guys to all start planning this. So exitreadiness.com. If you want to get more actively involved with Pat, go to Ennis, ENNISLP.com. And there's all sorts of programs and things there that you can use to reach out. You also have a podcast you mentioned. So please tell us about the podcast.
Yeah, Exit Readiness Podcast. I do it with Walter Dial, who's a partner tax partner at Gelman, Rosenberg, and Friedman in Bethesda. And we do work together. He knows the tax piece. He's also a certified exit planner like me and my partner. And so we do a lot of work together. We do a podcast together. We've done it Joe helps us most of the time over the last year or so. And it's starting to get a little bit of momentum. Not like yours. You're big time compared to us. You know, we're just the littles.
Well, you have a more niche market. So your listeners are probably... Exit Readiness Podcast. Get over there and listen to it. If you found this stuff interesting, which you should, it's a whole world of awesomeness, actually. And I'm really glad that you have a course and you have material about this because I've never seen it. It doesn't exist anywhere else as far as I'm concerned. So really powerful stuff. Anikpodcast.com to get the show notes. Make sure if you're listening to this on YouTube, come on, let's leave Pat a great comment below. Hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe, hit the bell, hit everything so you get notified. Hit it all. Click it all. And then if you're on iTunes, make sure you leave us a review and give us a 5-star review there so that we can keep growing this podcast out to everybody. Now, if you're listening, some big things are coming. I should have announced this at the beginning of the podcast, and I didn't. We got some big things coming. We're going to be announcing something really cool for the official season #1 of The Fighting Entrepreneur, and we're going to be raising a ton of money for nonprofits and creating a lot of competition and just having a good old time. Pat, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
It was an absolute pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
All right, everybody, go out there, kick some butt, take some names, build your business, keep coming back. I'll see you on the next Fighting Entrepreneur podcast. And as I always say, when life pushes you, stand straight, smile, and push it the heck back. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Fighting Entrepreneur with your host, Anik Singal.